No.
What's up?
If a girl has never slept with a black guy, can you answer this question? Because girls actually ask it.
Okay, I'm here. I'm ready to answer your
Okay.
question. Tell me.
Okay. Is your dick white on the bottom like your hands and feet? He didn't answer! Oh my god, I love
Wait.
it.
Hold on. Can you repeat that?
I don't know if I can do it with a straight face the second time.
Okay,
Oh my god.
I promise I won't laugh.
I'm sweating. Okay. Is your dick white on the bottom like your hands and feet?
No, it's not.
It's not like a chocolate eclair? You know, like how it's like the cake and then the chocolate? No? No.
Well, I don't know what black guy you've been with, but
He was multicolored. He was half black.
okay. No, it's not like it's not like the bottom of my feet. No,
Oh,
it's
okay.
just brown. You know.
Oh, all the way. Pure chocolate.
It's kind of red at the top a little bit. You know.
Okay.
Oh my god.
Educational for the girls who don't know.
Umbrella. She's up. Whole nother level of shit you can't even understand.
What is good, my people? We are live back again with another episode of The Forecast. Now, the reason that I talk about what I talk about is to not only bring a light to people's situation and to bring attention to injustices that our brothers and sisters have experienced. But I also talk about what I talk about so that we can start to see and learn the tactics that they use and the patterns. And still, for whatever reason, after hundreds of years, we still act surprised whenever something happens. As if this society wasn't built off dominating us. It's not about rules. It's never been about rules. It's about domination. It doesn't matter what you call yourself. It doesn't matter what you have. It doesn't matter your religious beliefs. Because at the end of the day, their goal is to dominate all of that. That's why when anybody talks about black people being killed or experiencing racism, to them, our lives is nothing but politics. From day one, it's been nothing but politics. The 3/5 clause is nothing but politics. But one thing they have learned that we need to learn, they will never let anybody oppress them. The colonies, America, went to war with Britain over taxes. Not their kids being killed on the street, but over taxes. They were willing to die for it. And now I'm only really telling you what George Washington told what would become America. But coming from me, even though I am an American, I would be labeled as a terrorist. Probably a black identity extremist. Because they are willing to protect what they have. And we feel bad for protecting our lives. In Chicago, a young brother, Ronald Johnson, was shot by Officer George Hernandez. Now let's see how this young brother could end up getting shot by the police.
All right, window shot out 5312 King. Black, blue hoodie, all right, male black running southbound at King Bay, sweatshirt, black pants. Unit, you got the air. Unit with the foot chase, you got the air. Shots fired, bad folks. We got shots fired. Shots fired by the police. We got shots fired. Get an ambulance over here. We got one in custody now. One in custody. Were any officers here? Get an ambulance over here. 513. All right, 513. Were any officers hit? Negative. 10-4. We'll get firewall for you. 513. 10-4. 63, roll the ambulance squad. Roll the ambulance. 5-3 and King, we'll get an ambulance going for you.
No criminal charges for the police officer seen in this video shooting and killing a young man in Chicago. Prosecutors say these just released images show Ronald Johnson with a gun in his hand. The Johnson's family says no way, claiming it's part of a cover-up. Good afternoon, I'm Rob Johnson.
And I'm Erica Sargent. Today's video release comes 2 weeks after footage was made public of another deadly police shooting. That, of course, was the killing of Laquan McDonald. And today, the Department of Justice said it's launching a federal investigation into the Chicago Police Department. Plus, another top Chicago officer, the chief of detectives, steps down. CBS 2's Vince Gerasoli has more now on what the latest police shooting video shows.
It happened so fast on video, prosecutors couldn't see it well the first time. So it was sent to an FBI crime lab, bumped up and slowed down for review, to the point where prosecutors pointed to what they determined to be a gun in the suspect's hand.
I am going to call it as I see it, based on the facts and the evidence in the law.
Cook County State's Attorney Anita Alvarez meticulously outlined the evidence as she defended her decision not to prosecute Officer George Hernandez, who fired the shots killing Ronald Johnson.
We're in different times right now when we're talking about transparency and what the public wants to see.
There were pictures of the car Johnson rode in, damaged by earlier gunfire, where a bullet casing matching his own gun was later found.
Chicago Police Emergency Miranda? Yes, there was some heavy gunfire.
Also, numerous 911 calls documenting violence that called police to the scene.
This is the fourth time in about 45 minutes that they're shooting out in front.
There were interactive maps indicating Johnson afterwards was fleeing authorities and was running, gun drawn, toward a manned cruiser just off camera. Factors that could legally contribute to reasonable force when Officer Hernandez shot Johnson in the back.
You have to consider the mental state of the police officer at the time that this happens.
Johnson's own companions state he was armed that evening, and evidence includes pictures of a gun retrieved at the scene and placed in a squad car. Part of a remarkable amount of evidence that Alvarez is sharing to help a city understand her decision.
We didn't have videos like this 15, 20 years ago.
Alvarez is commenting on the public demand to know the backstory of these videos now. Alvarez also expressed her frustration with the slow pace the Independent Police Review Authority gathers evidence. Case in point, she says the Johnsons came forward in April with 2 people that the family requested be interviewed. IPRA apparently got around to that only in the past week and a half.
So this brother Ronald Johnson was leaving a party with some of his friends, and the car he was riding in got shot up. Now here, the police have a few different stories about what happened. Now, in one story, according to the police, they parked their car after it got shot up, and then they came back later, and the brother Ronald Johnson even talked to one of the cops. And then they said as he was talking to one of the cops, another cop saw he had a gun, and he just took off running. But then in another story, they said after they parked the car, they got out and ran, and the police spotted him with a gun, and so they chased him. And according to the police, he got into an altercation with one of the cops and knocked him to the ground. But they said he was running with the gun out. So when did he pull it out? Did he get into a fight with a gun in his hand? I guess he must have gun butt one of the cops and made him fall. So then the cop George Hernandez sees him running towards him with the gun in his hand. And he feared for his life and had no other choice but to open fire. And that was his original story up until he found out there was a video. And then his story changed.
What happened to Ronnie?
He was killed by CPD on October the 12th, 2014, 5300 South King Drive.
Can you tell me more about what he was doing at that time, that day, what led to this?
He was at a party over there in that neighborhood, and the car that he was in had got shot up. And he jumped out and ran. In the process of him running, he was murdered.
And you are accusing CPD, Chicago Police, of not only, you say, killing him, but sitting on the tape. Tell me why you think that.
Because this happened a year ago, and I've been fighting since then to get the video released, and they still haven't released it.
What is the reason they've given you as far as why they haven't released it?
If I can maybe jump in on that.
Please do, Michael.
We filed a federal civil rights lawsuit shortly after the shooting and the killing of Ronald Holmes. Immediately, the city went in and obtained a protective order from the federal judge asking that the video not be released. I then filed a Freedom of Information request to get the video. That was denied by the Chicago Police Department in the city. We have since filed a FOIA, or Freedom of Information Act, lawsuit to get the video released. The city and the police have been blocking us at every step. They don't want this video released. They've sat on this 8 days prior to the Laquan McDonald shooting, and here we are again, same old story, covering this up. And all they've done is try to keep this quiet so the public can't see it, so the people that need to see this to know what's going on in this police department can't see it.
So here you are, both of you, fighting to have this, you know, the tape of Ronald released and his death that night last year. And Dorothy, to you, now, you know, here you see this video of Laquan's death. Have you watched the video?
Have I watched which video?
Not the video of your son that you're trying to have released, but the video of Laquan, who was killed after your son, when he was shot 16 times.
I couldn't watch it after I seen the first shots when he went down. I couldn't watch it no more after that.
What can you explain the emotions you were feeling, especially after going through what you did days before with your own son?
It brought back a lot of memories, and it brought back memories to what I had synced on the tape of my son.
Michael, we've reached out just to try to get some sort of side of the story from Chicago police. We reached out to Chicago Fraternal Order of Police. We've got nothing from them so far, although their spokesperson has told other outlets that since the shooting that Dorothy's son, that he had a gun and that he pointed his gun at officers before he was shot. I know you disagree. You tell me your version of events, please, sir.
So the night this happened, the Chicago Police Department issued a statement through their spokesman that said, as they always do in these police shootings, that he turned and pointed a gun. They feared for their safety, so the officer fired for his protection and the protection of others. Well, that was before they saw the video. The video is very clear in that, number one, he does not have any weapon in his hand or anything in his hand. He is running full speed away from the police. The officer got out of his car, took 3 steps, aimed towards Ronald Johnson's back, and fired 5 shots. 2 of those shots struck him. One went through the back, severed the jugular vein, and went out through his eye socket. The police then say that when he fell, they recovered a gun from his right hand. First of all, he never turned and pointed anything. He never even turned, and that's clear on the video. Since then, the police have changed their story about him turning. They've been caught in a bundle of lies. The lies keep continuing. There's no way that that gun was in his hand. There was nothing in his hand. And we are alleging, and we believe, and it's clear, that they planted that gun after he was executed by Officer Hernandez.
So after the police found out there was a video, the cop went from he turned around and pointed the gun at me to maybe he didn't turn around after all. And the police have so many stories about what happened. For all I know, they could have been the ones shooting at him in the first place when they shot the car up. And that's not even far-fetched about the Chicago police. They have all of these shootings, but they have no arrests. And by the way, if they don't have an arrest or even a suspect, how can you classify it as black-on-black crime? But the state attorney, Anita Alvarez, saw the video and said clearly it was a gun in his hand. And the video shows the cop was clearly justified in shooting this young brother. No, I don't know if she had a different version where she clearly saw a gun. But Anita Alvarez justified the shooting because she's a hopeful white, and she said so. She said there's not enough evidence to say the cop did anything wrong.
This is Officer Hernandez in the backseat, Gonzalez and Liano. Here's Johnson running behind. You see the flash of the shots coming from Hernandez. And Officer Hernandez was the officer closest to Johnson. It is our determination that no criminal charges should be filed in this case against Officer Hernandez because a crime cannot be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. And with a very, very careful analysis of the laws of the state of Illinois, it is our determination that no criminal charges will be filed against Officer Hernandez in connection with the shooting death of Ronald Johnson. The totality of the evidence establishes the following. At the time of the shooting, Mr. Johnson was armed with a handgun. Mr. Johnson had run from an area where shots had recently been fired. Mr. Johnson resisted arrest, and Mr. Johnson ran into a public park and towards an occupied police vehicle that was arriving on the scene in that park.
Based upon an objective review of the evidence and the law, we have determined that the prosecution could not establish beyond a reasonable doubt that the actions of Officer Hernandez were not reasonable and permissible under the laws of the state of Illinois. Mr. Johnson did not comply with the officer's orders and instead ran from the officers while holding the gun. One of the officers reholstered his weapon to free up his hands to place Johnson under arrest, but Johnson was able to break free of this officer's grasp, and the officer fell to the ground. Another occupant from the vehicle confirms that he had heard police yell out that Johnson had a gun. At that point, Mr. Johnson turned away from those two officers and began to flee in a diagonal direction, crossing King Drive while still holding on to this weapon. Officer Hernandez was one of 3 officers who had responded to the scene in an unmarked police cruiser, and the 3 officers were exiting their vehicle when Johnson ran behind their car and toward the nearby Washington Park towards another police unit. At that time, Officer Hernandez began pursuit of Mr. Johnson and then fired 5 shots. 2 of those shots struck Mr. Johnson, one in the back of his right knee. The second shot entered just below Mr. Johnson's right armpit and exited the body near the left eye socket. Mr. Johnson was pronounced dead soon after being transported to the hospital from the scene.
Now, despite whatever happened, this is just another case of a young brother shot down, and we don't know what happened. And they justify it by using talking points like, well, you know, it's Chicago. And if you're going to hold the people who are supposed to be cops who get paid by taxpayer dollars to the same standard as the people who you call thugs, and while we feed into it and say, yeah, well, what about black on black crime? Donald Trump over here blocking the police reform they were supposed to have in Chicago. And while we debate whether Kanye was right or wrong, as if we haven't learned our lesson after hundreds of years, Donald Trump said, the hell with the 4th Amendment. Let's just have stop and frisk. And there are a lot of black people who would agree with stop and frisk, even though it'll be black people disproportionately stopped and frisked. It's just a lot of us don't realize how easily it can hit close to home. But we have got to stop being surprised and trying all the things that didn't work over and over again, and condemning all the things that actually did work. During Jim Crow, our ancestors had to live through some horrible things. But as a separated community, they were successful because they had to trust each other, because they had to do business with each other, because we had to marry each other and raise a family together. We didn't have a choice. And today we can do the same thing. But we have to protect ourselves when they come with the things they did with Jim Crow. But the point is, we have to protect ourselves, period, because nobody else is going to do it.
Welcome back. We start off monitoring domestic news in Chicago, Illinois, following up on a major news from the Trump administration that's been overlooked by the many in the media. The Justice Department announced on Friday that it will intervene in the state in order to kill a plan designed to reform Chicago's police force. Attorney General Jeff Sessions said in a statement released on the Justice Department website, quote, "There is a misinterpretation that police are the problem and that their failures, their lack of training, and their abuses create crime. But the truth is the police are the solution to crime and criminals are the problem." DOJ informed a federal judge that it is seeking to halt an agreement announced in July of this year reached between the state of Illinois and the city of Chicago. The deal placed Chicago's 12,000-strong police force under federal court supervision after it was found the department routinely violated people's rights. The new terms would require officers issue a verbal warning before using any force, provide life-saving aid if force is used, and that authorities file paperwork anytime they point their weapon, even if it isn't fired. It also necessitates Chicago release a monthly report documenting use of force incidents and establishes a 180-day deadline on investigations conducted by the Civilian Office of Police Accountability and the department's Internal Affairs Bureau. As we reported here on In Question last week, President Trump recently spoke about Chicago during a speech at the International Association of Chiefs of Police.
And I have directed the Attorney General's office to immediately go to the great city of Chicago to help straighten out the terrible shooting wave. Want to straighten it out fast. There's no reason for what's going on there. I've told them to work with local authorities to try to change the terrible deal the city of Chicago entered into with ACLU, which ties law enforcement's hands, and to strongly consider stop and frisk. It works, and it was meant for problems like Chicago. It was meant for it. Stop and frisk.
H&M at 227. Stop.
Chase, where are you, Chase? He got his hands on him. We upstairs.
You're about to go to jail. You're going to go to a youth detention center if you don't stop.
He's not doing anything. He got his rights. He's not even doing anything right now, sir. And I have his father on the phone, and you won't even speak to him.
Yep.
So she can do a let go of me.
No.
I know
Man, nah, bro. You're not gonna handle him like that. You're not gonna handle him like that, my nigga. You're not gonna handle him like that.
You put your hands on me again.
You put your hands on my motherfucking nephew. You put your hands on my motherfucking nephew.
Get him back. Hold on to him.
Bro, Corey, man. Y'all, what the fuck you do? No. Get him off me, bro.
F3 is 10-3. F3 is 10-3.
Tell me, bro.
2494 upper level in front of H&M.
12-year-old rising rap star at the center of a new viral video after getting into an argument with an officer at the mall. Now this boy is facing charges, and those on Facebook and Instagram are wondering how it got to this point and whether the situation might have been handled differently. 11 Alive's Naima Abdullahi is talking to both sides tonight.
Corey J. went to Cumberland Mall with family. His family tells me they didn't think that visit would become confrontational. This is Corey J. on Ellen's couch about a year ago.
The little C note is your name.
Well, actually, you can just call me Corey J.
Then he hit the stage.
Okay, it's Corey J, the kid, the one you heard about.
The rising rap star, who has mingled with celebs and famous artists in Atlanta, went to Cumberland Mall recently, according to his family, and this happened. A cop police officer restraining him inside the mall.
You're going to go to a youth detention center if you don't stop. No.
The family says Corey J. was wrongfully targeted by officers. He was warned before not to come to the mall to sell his CDs. And the family says this time he returned just to meet up with another artist. Then this scruffle.
I know.
Man, nah, bro. You're not gonna handle him like that.
Cobb County police say the young artist was selling CDs again, and that's when mall security requested help from a police officer.
In that interaction, the juvenile continued to be verbally resistive to give any information. A lot of people have said that he was manhandling. The officer, all he was doing was holding the young man by the arm.
The 12-year-old boy was charged with felony obstruction, misdemeanor obstruction, criminal trespass, and disorderly conduct. Over the phone, the family tells me the child is accused of pushing the officer and cussing, but they say that did not happen. Police say the clip circulating online doesn't tell the whole story.
We are seeing just a short snippet of what transpired there that day on social media.
So we requested the officer's body cam video to get a fuller picture, but police have not released it yet.
She said don't play with it no more, I'm gonna cut the wrist.
A Milwaukee public school teacher under fire after she cut a 7-year-old girl's hair off in class. Only on 12 News, why the little girl says her teacher got so upset and how MPS officials are responding. Good evening, I'm Kathy Michaelby.
And I'm Terry Sater. Toya has the night off. A Milwaukee teacher is charged with disorderly conduct after punishing a first grader by cutting her hair. In a story you'll see only on 12 News, Nick Bohr is here live with the little girl's story in her own words, Nick.
And Terry, Lamaya Kamen is angry, confused, and scared by the incident last week in which the apparently frustrated teacher cut one of her hair braids off after she wouldn't stop playing with them in class. 7-year-old Lamaya Kamen sports a few dozen braids, but one is conspicuously absent.
She told me to stop playing with it and then cut it off and send me back to my desk.
Lamaya is a first grader at Congress Elementary and says her teacher used a classroom scissors to cut off one of the braids after she absentmindedly kept playing with them. Tell me how you play with your hair. Show me what that means.
I wasn't playing that loud, I was doing this.
She says the teacher called her to the front of the room and cut it in front of the whole class. What did you do?
I went to my desk and cried. And they was laughing. She threw it away. And she said, now what you gonna go home and tell your mama? And then I said, you cut off my hair.
Lamaya's mom was and is furious. She went to the school and confronted the teacher.
I said, well, you know, you cut a lot of her hair off. And then she was like, well, I do apologize. She said, but I was frustrated.
The MPS district says they're going through the disciplinary process with the teacher, who remains in class, though Lamaya has been moved to a different classroom by the principal.
The main thing is, from the heart of the principal, and also from me speaking for the district, we're very sorry that this happened.
Lamaya's mom appreciates the apology, but says the district should seriously question whether the teacher should keep her job.
Why would we want someone like that teaching our kids? We trust our kids, and you know, once they go to school, to be safe.
Milwaukee police investigated the case and referred it to the district attorney for possible physical or mental abuse of a child charges. When the district attorney's office decided not to file criminal charges, police this week issued the teacher a $175 ticket for disorderly conduct. Now, we tried to talk to the teacher today, but were unable to reach her.
Oh, she slammed her over there by her neck. It'll take two of y'all for her.
Gentleman refuses to move his car because he supposedly does not think that I live here.
When Dr. Nene Aguacha returned home to her gated townhome community in Buckhead, she was met with an unexpected roadblock.
This guy has been in front of my car now for the last 10-15 minutes.
He didn't believe me. He kept on